Welcome to Two Taps and Friends. Grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's dive into another episode of Two Taps and Friends.
Welcome back to Two Taps and Friends. I'm your host, Danny Rosenberg. I got my esteemed panel back on. I have Michael Dye, attorney Michael Dye, defense attorney, longtime colleague, trial partner. I have another longtime friend, colleague, esteemed defense attorney Johnny Weeks back on here with us. I had the panel come back on because we have updates in the cases that we were First of all, welcome back, fellas.
Thanks,
Thank you.
All right, so we have updates on the cases that we covered pretty extensively, the Diddy trial, where we were at that point, and we also covered the Idaho murders, the Kohberger case. And I think we start with the most recent update that, this is just hours ago.
Yeah.
They came back saying that there's a plea offer that has been reached on that Kohberger deal. And what the deal is that purportedly is being put out there is that he's about to plea. I think it's coming up, the plea. Did
Yeah.
they schedule it? When is it?
I don't know if they scheduled it yet.
Yeah, but it's coming up in quick. They're trying to do a quick turnover on it. They're going to forego, in exchange for his plea, they would forego the death penalty. And again, just a quick backdrop on the Idaho murders for those who weren't watching before. It was this brutal murder of 4 roommates, college roommates, that were in a really horrific fashion murdered with a knife, and it was brutal, one of the most brutal scenes. They got an individual that they found DNA on a knife sheath. They placed him there with his vehicle, and a lot of circumstantial evidence, but we'll get into that. But anyway, so they've now offered to forego the death sentence in exchange for the plea. He would have 4 consecutive life sentences, and they would forego the death penalty. So it looks like he's going to accept that deal. I'm going to turn to you guys for your opinion on this first. Obviously, we probably all have the same mindset, but I understand that the families are very, very upset about it. They weren't even informed by phone call. Apparently, there was a letter sent. This is per one of the families. I think the Goncalves family or whatever that family's last name is. I might have screwed up that. I apologize if I did. But they were informed by letter that this was the plea offer that was going to be relayed. So I'll turn to you guys. What is your opinion? I guess we'll start with Mike. We'll go to Johnny next.
Well, here's from my watching a little bit of the news around the trial. The defense wanted to put forth a defense of 4 alternative suspects who they said could have done it. And in criminal defense, there's only a handful of defenses. You either didn't do it, you didn't mean to do it, or you're crazy. And when you say didn't do it, that has little sub-defenses, and we always call it the Sodi defense,
Right.
where some other dude did it.
Right.
And so they wanted to go with the some other dude did it defense. But the judge, it's a really tricky area of law. You can poke holes in the state's evidence that tends to point at another individual. However, you can't name that individual unless you have a good faith basis to believe that the person actually did it.
Right.
Now, there were 4 individuals that they were going to point out that could have, that had the opportunity to, but the judge ruled that it was nothing more than speculation and conjecture, and that he wasn't going to let them proceed with the actual naming of people. They asked him for leeway in their initial cross-examination of the detectives in the case, and the judge shut down that line of questioning, said they couldn't proceed with that defense. So once that defense is off the table, the some other dude did it defense was off the table, they really had nothing left.
Johnny, what's your take on it so far from what you understand?
I think the more important thing is the families. I mean, we've been in these cases all the time in reference to the families. I mean, even in Florida, we have a law that basically says that the families have to have a say. They have to be provided information in reference to, and I couldn't find whether or not they had that such a same Marsy's law up in Idaho. I wasn't able to pull that up yet, but basically Marsy's law indicates that the families almost can dictate the outcome of cases and talk to the state attorney's office and really have a larger weight placed upon their needs than 4 or 5 years ago. And I think that that's a really really different than, I mean, this particular case. The state attorney's office, I think you said a letter, it might have been an email to the victims saying, this is what we're going to give them. We don't want to put you through the pictures and the graphic, testimony and put people on the stand. However, all the families already had seen all the testimony, as I heard this morning.
Right.
And they were ready to testify because they really wanted this individual to get the death penalty. Now, getting the death penalty, certain individuals or certain jurors have to all vote for the death penalty.
Right.
So that's in and of itself. And I guess the state is saving money by agreeing to a life sentence. But I really feel bad for the families of the victims in this particular case because, I mean, they were pulled apart numerous times on this case because of venue issues, whether or not the case was supposed to go faster or slower. Then the defendant wanted to call in, I believe, this past week, he wanted to call in witnesses from his hometown. So they had a hearing in his hometown for a judge in his hometown to decide whether or not his karate coach was going to come in and be subpoenaed as a witness just to basically boost up his credibility. But that family has gone through a lot.
Right.
And I think that they should have a little bit more than a say, or, I don't think the prosecution has done them justice.
Right. But I think a lot of people don't, what the general public doesn't understand is what goes into getting a death penalty, to getting the death penalty. First of all, we brought up some issues with the case, obviously itself, getting the conviction, right? Now, there's DNA. It was very tough to get around that DNA. We agree on that. Circumstantial evidence, but again, there's arguments to be made around circumstantial evidence. And Michael, you made the point that you think there's more than one person involved in this as well.
I'm fairly certain.
Right. So if you could create as a defense attorney, and you made a point that, he shut down referencing the names, but they could still insinuate that there was more people there. That doesn't completely shut down the defense, right?
No.
I think that it would have been problematic. The state must have seen some problems there that they wanted to guarantee this conviction or this plea, right? And then add on the fact that, the death phase is a whole nother trial that people don't really understand. We saw it with the Parkland murders. People didn't get what was going on. A lot of people, they were watching it. They're like, well, he's guilty. But like, this is not the issue here, right? The issue, he's going to bring in witnesses from all over the place and doing all this kind of stuff. And, I'm interested to see what the state's mentality was there. What is your opinion?
I think there has to be definitely an issue in reference to the trial.
Right.
And the reason why I think that is because in this plea agreement, he's agreed not to appeal.
Yeah.
So that was made a really big deal, and I think that his agreement not to appeal this plea and come back on appeal tends to make me think that there's something out there that we're not aware of, that they haven't made public, that, and technically speaking for the defense team, it's probably a win. Life is a win in a four-person murder case.
The way that murder was,
Right.
if ever there was a death penalty that's warranted, right?
Correct.
What is the standard for the death penalty again? Egregious and heinous, and what is it?
There's several different standards, but it has to be heinous, atrocious, cruel, lying in wait for pecuniary gain, multiple victims. I think
Every single one of theirs is checked.
check, right?
He was driving down the road. He came back. He came around. It's a very bad case. So for the defense team, that's a win, and I think that's why the family's so upset. But there must be something that they have not told the public, and I have a feeling that it comes from the witnesses of that last hearing. Because why did that last hearing have so much? All of a sudden, out of nowhere, a plea deal is made.
Right.
Well, and
That's true.
on that point, was right after the judge ruled that they couldn't bring the names of the four suspects or the four potential suspects in. It was right after the judge shot down that ruling that the plea came to pass, or the plea offer came to pass.
You think some people from his hometown were in on it?
No, no, not those. Remember, he wanted to name four potential suspects
Right.
that the police didn't investigate, and after the judge shut that down, then that's when they entered into the plea. So I think there might be something there that tends to show, at a minimum, somebody else was involved.
Yeah, just the logistics of this, like we talked about that.
Because everybody,
Johnny talked about that, specifically with the blood in the car. Like
There's no way that you could leave a scene like that, not have any blood in your car, not have any blood on your clothes, not have a drop of blood anywhere, for how graphic a knife, 4 knife murders occur.
right, there was blood
It's just
coming,
not even
blood coming out of the
feasibly possible.
doors and windows,
yeah, it was
right?
leaking out of the foundation, between the walls and the foundation.
Yeah. So I mean, so the pushback now, the families they get to appear at the plea, and they can,
They could yell at them, but that's about all that's
That's
going to
about it,
happen.
right?
It's not like the
affect
judge
it.
can. Well, that particular judge, some judges reject pleas.
Right. I was just saying, can this judge reject the plea? I was just thinking, we talked about that. There's some judges that reject the plea, and this judge is got all the cameras on him. You know.
I don't think you can reject 4 life sentences.
I agree. That's a tough one. That's a tough
Yeah.
one. What's your thought?
I mean, I think he could do it. I don't think he will do it.
Right.
Because again, he's thinking, like with what Johnny said, there's a reason the state is wanting to give this offer. And there's a reason that the state insists that he waives all his right to appeal.
Right. And the worst part is a lot of times the families of the victim, they're not versed in law. They're not versed in rules of evidence. They don't understand the weaknesses, right? They have this simple analysis of why we need to kill him. You know what I mean? And
Rightfully so, though. I think if we
agree.
were all in that situation, we would
Oh.
all want the same. I mean, I would.
And if they took it into their own hands, I wouldn't have any moral qualm with it. But I mean, I sit there and I think about my daughter. All right, and I'm getting old. Somebody would have to make it to, somebody would have to stop my sons before
right.
it's.
We see a lot of crazy courtroom behavior. I would not be surprised that at that sentencing, there's not some type of courtroom behavior that jumping over a podium to attack him, something, especially
yeah.
with the family and how outraged they are.
And security is going to be super tight.
Well, hopefully security is super tight. You never know. We were still dealing with some incompetence probably over there. But it's funny because that lends itself to the conversation. A lot of people as defense attorneys say, I remember I was in public defender's office. Like everybody was like, "Yo, you must be anti the death penalty." I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, what's your position on death penalty? You're gonna get controversial here, but what's your position on death penalty?
Just because I'm a criminal defense attorney doesn't mean that I'm against the death penalty. I think
Agreed.
there's numerous cases that qualify for the death penalty. I mean,
Right.
just because you're either liberal, conservative, public defender, or state attorney, I think your opinions on that based on your experiences in growing up and your life experiences, not really based on whether or not you're a public defender or so. I mean, you're doing a job.
Right.
And as a defense attorney, we're doing a job in order to try to save the life of another individual. Doesn't mean I would agree with it.
Right.
Doesn't mean that the guys that sit next to me every day, I'm happy to sit next to them. But I'm doing a job and I'm trying to make sure that their rights, and that's the underlining best idea of this, is that their fundamental constitutional rights are protected.
Right.
And that's it. And so by trying to protect their rights, it's a job like anybody else's job. I might not agree with, the ultimate, decision for what my client did, or might not agree with, a jury's verdict that comes back, or I might agree with a jury's verdict come back. But as long as I can protect his rights and make sure that he got a fair trial, right, and he was treated properly, that's my job. So and I agree with you, Danny. There's been numerous cases that I've had that sometimes the verdicts come back and completely different than what I thought, and you win a case and you're like, what were they thinking?
Right. Right.
And when it comes down to the death penalty, I think there's numerous cases that the death penalty is warranted. I mean, those individuals should not be in society with us because it causes a problem, I mean, where else we're going to put them?
Right. And logistically, there's a problem with the death penalty in that it takes so long for it to happen, and there's so many appeals, and people don't understand that. I get that, though. Like, if we're going to have the death penalty in place, it should be scrutinized to the max. But I don't know, what do you think on the death penalty before I move on?
I've got some weird views on this one. Number one, I'm not a fan of the death penalty in the sense how it is now. I don't think that the government should be in the business of killing anybody. But at the same time, I do think that if the family wants to do it, I think the death penalty should go like this. If a person's sentenced to death, you give the gun to the family member and say, you do it.
Yeah, but that's not realistic.
It's not, but that's just my opinion on it.
Right.
As a society, we're not ready to accept that. But I think in other countries, it is that way. If the family wants the death penalty, they're the ones who goes ahead and gets to do it. So I prefer that method. I do think the death penalty is actually overused right now. I think that, when it's meant for the worst of the worst, not somebody who robs a convenience store and kills
But
somebody
are they
in the
using
process.
it for people that rob a convenience store? Like, if
Yeah,
you have to
like-
meet that standard, it's a pretty
Per
tough standard to meet.
Pecuniary gain is one of the standards for the death penalty.
So you can, on that alone.
I believe so. I've only done one case that involved the death penalty. So I think you actually have to have two aggravating factors like lying in wait and pecuniary gain or multiple victims. Or victim under 12 was the one that in my case.
Yeah. Like, my position on it is that, I'm with Johnny on it. I think something's warranted, right?
Yeah.
I think we should be it should be scrutinized, and particularly Israel, they don't do it. But
Oh, you
they
did.
made exceptions.
Yeah, they did
Like,
once.
they hired Eichmann, they hung him, right? And they're talking about hanging a couple people now, but it's definitely one of those things. But I think that the family, people underestimate, I think, how grotesque some of those photos are going to be coming out, like what these families would have to go through. When you're saying they were prepared for it, do you know that they were like shown this evidence by the state?
That's what they said on national TV today, this morning on the Today Show. So obviously they've indicated that they've seen it now. Have they seen everything? I mean, there's a lot, I'm sure. But I think that they've indicated that they've seen all these photos and they're ready to testify and they want their chance in court. And, not really sure what they would be testifying to in the trial aspect. To be
In
candid
the
with
trial,
you,
I don't even
right?
know because
so
they're
when
not.
they say some of these things, as you've indicated, I think a lot of victims just want to make sure that they can be heard, and they
That's
think
fair.
they're fighting for their loved one. That being said, once the individual has accepted a plea, everything they say at the end of the case when he's being sentenced is immaterial.
It's just to be heard.
It's just to be heard.
Right.
And I think that they wanted the opportunity to stand in front of the court and jurors and ask for the death penalty. I think that that's their
At least go through the death phase, and if they say
Be
no,
able to
they
s-
say no. We end up in the same spot.
correct.
Right.
I think.
But it must have been, sorry to interrupt, but it
No
must
problem.
have been that the state literally had problems with the case if they're not willing to give them that, Think about that. If they're not willing to even go through that, it's not money. I don't think it's money, but who knows with Idaho, maybe it is money.
And the way they told them,
that was just, if that's the case, come on. That's a meeting.
which means
that's
to
a
me
meeting.
there's something up. Right. You have to at least sit them all down.
Or they
say
screwed something up.
something happened.
They dropped the ball. They did something improper. They made an improper thing, or something came up. Tech would be interested to find out what that's about. If we'll ever find out what that's about.
Right.
Back to one of the things Johnny was saying about, sometimes you find the person who you're sitting next to a little bit distasteful. Sometimes as defense attorneys, we have to go into areas of evidence that, people might find, like, well, why are you doing that? They might find like we're attacking the victim's character or something like that. But when these families say, well, they've seen all the evidence, but what about in the hearing where they were pointing out, and this is hypothetical, I'm not saying this about any particular person. What about if the hearing that you hear, all of a sudden you hear that one of these girls was an escort who has 10 guys in and out of the house at night, every night? All right. Now, is the family, does the family get made aware of that? Or does the state just go ahead and say, you know what, let's just go ahead and not let them attack the character of the victim?
Well, that's true.
So there's a lot of reasons why, even if the family says that they've seen all the bloody, gory evidence, the defense is still going to try to pinpoint other people that are in that girl's vicinity at the time. And it might not always be something that the family would be prepared to hear or accept. And that's why we get, sometimes we get bad reputations for doing that. But again, we've got to protect our clients' rights.
One of the living roommates was definitely going to get attacked, right?
Yeah.
That would have been the basis of half the defense, right? The one girl that never called, they didn't call till the
Went back
next
to
day, right? Went back to bed.
Saw the alleged individual that did it.
Dude, that girl's gonna be. She would have been fair game. Like that would have been the crust of was she involved? Maybe was she? And I'm just speculating.
There's no way that she walked out and didn't have blood on her at some point.
Right. Was she part of a drug deal gone bad, or was she? There's all kinds of things that could have been painted in there that they're probably like, oof. We don't have a slam, a home run. You know what I mean? We don't have a home run, and I don't think anything's really a home run. But like, you know.
And when the media presents a case like this, of course, you look at everything that the media is saying, and you're like, well, this is a no-brainer. This is going to be a slam dunk, and there is no slam dunk. I think the first time we all saw that was when O.J. Simpson got found not guilty. I mean, everything that we were led to believe for that case was that this was a slam dunk. And then it turns out that the cops planted blood evidence at the house. And, if he lies about that one thing, then what else is he lying about?
That's the thing about trial, And that's the thing about trials. It could go either way. But I agree with Johnny that, I do feel bad for the families. But at the same time, you are getting this guy put away for 4 life sentences. He's not able to appeal. That's going to save them. Imagine the appeals, too. Like every time. So he gets a death penalty. Every appeal, they're going to be going. And I'm sure this is without the possibility of parole. Like the guy ends up with going to paroles and all this kind of stuff. There's all kinds of things that.
I mean, even the appeal of venue changing.
Right?
Yeah.
Something as simple as that would make you get a whole new retrial.
Right. This is going to bring closure.
Right.
Whether it's the closure they want or not, that's debatable, and that's something that I could stomach them dealing with that over that, a complete walk away. But the one thing is that it's going to be tough to know whatever happened here. Like I'm interested to see what really went down here. Did this guy really single-handedly go in there and pull off this Rambo-like murder?
No.
I don't
Unless
think
he
we'll ever
makes
find
a
out.
statement, which he probably won't. But speaking of closure, I mean, we are probably hours away, maybe a day away from a closure of the P. Diddy.
Exactly. It's a good
I
transition.
mean, that's a great.
It's a good transition. I'm going to
That's
start moving to Johnny to transition. He does it so well. Yeah,
I just think that's. I mean, we've been talking about that. We talked about the human trafficking aspect of it. We made a joke earlier before we came on the air. I mean, because even I saw Judge Mathis, which is a judge on TV all the time, said there's no way they could prove him guilty of human trafficking.
Right.
So my first question is, do they return the baby oil?
It's in evidence.
Most cases.
It's a lot of baby
evidence.
oil.
Right.
It's a lot of
Motion to
baby oil,
return,
dude.
So, I mean, like, at best, the only thing they really have him on is, like we talked about earlier, in reference to the arson.
That's it.
And the question is does that jury believe that the arson is somehow that he controlled some conspiracy to engage in a criminal enterprise?
Right.
And just because you burn a car, because you're upset.
And you open Christmas gifts.
I
But you know what's crazy? They called 32 witnesses?
34.
I read a lot of those witnesses. I didn't read all the testimony, but it seemed to me the same testimony over and over again about
how bad of a guy
how bad of a guy he is, how abusive he was, how he had, one guy testified he had this look in his eyes. The security guy was like, oh, what? Like they look at it, like I could tell he wasn't there. I'm like, all right, well, was he trafficking humans? Was he, like the male escort was like, oh yeah, he would pay me, and he beat her up. And she would say sorry if she didn't listen to him. And I'm like, they're like, why didn't you intervene? Well, I wasn't going to intervene. He's like, I'm not getting involved in that, There was just, I didn't, did you see any of the witnesses? Did you read any testimony that was like, whoa, maybe they get the human trafficking?
Yes.
What?
Cassie's mom.
What did she, that was interesting. Tell me about that.
She said that I think she had to take a mortgage or get a loan or something
yes,
like
I saw that. I saw that.
Because
He threatened her.
Diddy was threatening to release the sex tapes unless Cassie gave him $20,000. So
P. Diddy needs $20,000? Right.
I don't know.
I don't.
And so she got the money, and got the money to Diddy so that he wouldn't release the sex tapes.
That's weak.
I didn't see anything in I mean, what was it, cash?
I don't know.
Did she wire it to him? P. Diddy? $20,000. The guy probably drops $20,000 on a club night with like,
On Uber Eats.
He was running low. He was running low on Astroglide and baby oil. He needed the money.
I mean, that is weak. If that's what you have, that's weak. But they called 30. I mean, but the thing is, does the judge allow, at some point, as the defense, don't you shut it down? Like, what is this testimony towards?
Well, I think
you're
that-
just giving it to, what is the testimony allowed in for? Just to
I think
show?
the judge kind of showed the prosecution to try to, I mean, at the end, listen, some of these charges that you have just aren't going to really stick. You need to kind of narrow them down. And they did a little. They got rid of some of the attempt stuff. They went for what we would call the home run on some of these cases and not, which we have all the time in our cases where, you know, you have the highest charged, and you're all, which is a really great issue. Sometimes you think you won the highest charge case. Like, you're like, that's going to be a not guilty.
Right.
And then the state always asks, or the federal government always asks for lessers. And sometimes because they can't agree back there, the jury thinks, well, we think you're a bad guy.
Right.
So we're going to hit you with a lesser. The jury doesn't know that lesser still carries like
Right.
a 5 or 10 year
Right.
minimum mandatory, or sometimes, I mean, so you can say you won the battle but lost the war type thing. So
Right.
in this particular case, the feds decided to go for the gusto and
All or
got
nothing.
rid of
The
all
lessers.
that. So that in and of itself is I think a huge win.
Huge
for the
thing.
defense.
Especially defense. We're trying to get that, right?
Right. So, and listen, I think they're going to come back with something on this case, you know? And I
think
still
it's
think
gonna-
that he's still going to do 18 to 24 months in prison.
What's the something? Let's break down
I
what he
think
could
the
potentially
something's
get. What are
gonna
the counts
be-
again? We have racketeering.
Transporting,
Transporting the prostitution.
transporting prostitutes across state lines.
Correct.
I think they got that one pretty cold.
What is the guideline on that alone? Do we know?
I don't know. I know it's a felony. I looked that up. It is a felony.
So he's got no priors. So on the federal guideline score sheet,
He's got no priors at all, even when he was younger, like no state priors, nothing?
no.
All right, go ahead, sorry.
So, I mean, he would score 0 to 1
Right.
for criminal history.
Right? I mean, the level can't be that high on that.
I don't believe there's a minimum mandatory because it's just money.
Right.
And I think that he probably was
1824
18 to 24 months.
The lower category, right. One of the lower ones. And
He's
then,
been in for at least 10 to 12 already.
has it been, it might be longer,
Yeah.
no? It's been
been a
longer.
10
Wow.
to 12. It's about almost a year.
Wow.
So I think he almost gets time served.
If he gets time served and comes back and like, he'll be bigger than ever.
Well, I mean,
He'll come out like Tupac.
I would immediately fly to his
Yeah.
private island, and I probably would stay there like those old guys.
He would be
that-
getting all the baby oil sponsorships alone.
yeah.
The baby oil sponsorships alone will carry him, you know? I mean, we joke about this, but you know, but like obviously he's a bad dude. He's beaten up, like he's got
Numerous women,
problems, right? He's got problems.
The thing, they had 2 women testify that he beat the crap out of them when they did not want to participate in the freak-offs, or they want to call them hotel nights or something like that. And
How do you know that wasn't part of the freak off?
yeah,
The
that's a
beating,
good
right?
question, you know? I mean,
But he dated a lot of other women that are publicly and celebrity known. Jennifer Lopez.
They never came forward.
They never come
testified.
forward. I mean, why didn't the government call her to say whether or not she had a freak off with Diddy? I mean, it was in the same period of time. I mean, there's numerous. I don't know. I just.
Yeah, it
because they'd
seems
have
like
to give
But
her
if he
immunity.
wins, let's say this, it would be like the OJ effect, and this is what I call the OJ effect. When your clients come in to your office and they have a mountain of evidence against them, right? And P. Diddy has a mountain of evidence. They're like, OJ won? Why can't I win? You know?
Exactly.
Right? And it's just a complete unrealistic idea of what we do as defense attorneys. And that only transpires if you go to trial, because at trial, there's always holes in a case. The
Right.
question is what jury do you get? So, but you can't make that determination without knowing the jury, without knowing the nuances
There's
of how
so
that's
many
going to
nuances.
pull out. And, you know, if he gets lucky and he wins, a lot of it is luck. A lot of it's luck. You just happen to have the right juror who sits in the back that says, I'm not finding him guilty no matter what.
Right.
And I think from what I heard this morning, and I'm not sure if you heard this on the news,
About the juror?
there is an issue with the
Yeah.
juror already. Because there's an issue on the juror already, I think that there's already some type of problems going on in the back where one juror most likely will not agree to the verdicts that those individuals, because initially when they go back in the back, the first thing they do is they select the foreperson. Once they select that foreperson, he kind of controls the room. And then they do an initial vote. What do you think? Guilty, not guilty? And if one person says, listen, I believe he's not guilty no matter what, it's a hung jury. And for some reason, I have a feeling that there's a holdout already back there. And that person's either acting up one way or the other.
So did they remove him or not? I'm sorry.
No, they said there was one juror that wasn't following instructions.
And he was a black juror, and they made a big thing about that. Did you see that? They made
Which
a big thing
makes
about
me
that.
makes me believe that he's. I think it comes back hung, because whether or not he's following instructions or not, he's allowed to have his vote cast just like everybody else. The jury might not be happy with the way he thinks the facts and the align with the law, but so imagine this whole trial, 34 witnesses, they can't get a verdict, and it comes back hung. Do they let him out then?
Right. Or did they do it all over again? They probably do it all over again.
I don't.
Or they let him out or mean on bond.
Well, right, because
Depending.
they say that he's threatening witnesses, and he has the ability to threaten witnesses. That was the whole issue in reference to.
So is that a win for him if he's got to sit in and wait for a do-over the entire time?
No, I think anytime you have a do-over,
You get
that's a loss.
Yeah.
Because
I
the next
agree.
time the government's ready and more prepared,
Right.
and they'll shrink down their case and they'll make it even fine-tuner. So I think this is his only shot.
Right. This is his only shot. But it'd be
Yeah, I
interesting
was
to
thinking it's possibly a hung jury, but I mean, maybe on the racketeering charges, but I think there are some, like the interstate transportation prostitutes. I think that's a lock. You know, but again, there might be somebody who's just like, I'm not finding him guilty no matter what.
Right. Well, when we get a verdict, we'll all be back to talk about it. And I got to get a couple of guys out of here that have court, so I can't keep them too long. So I would thank you guys for coming on. It's always a pleasure. We'll have you back on. I'm sure we'll follow this. We'll see what's going on with this. We'll see what happens with the Kohberger. I don't even know when that sentencing is going to be, but that'll be interesting to see. I'm sure the parents will get to speak and families. And with Diddy, who knows where that goes. But, you know, thank you guys for coming on always. And to all my viewers and listeners, thank you for watching Two Taps and Friends. We appreciate you. We love you. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Like I've been saying, if you like and subscribe to the channel, it gives a big boost to all what we're doing here. It helps out a lot, so please like and subscribe. We're everywhere. We're on YouTube Music. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. We also have a link at the bottom if you want to buy some Two Taps and Friends swag. A lot of fun, interesting stuff there. So please like and subscribe. Thank you for listening. We love you all. We'll be back soon. Goodbye. Cut.